Hello. A very warm welcome to our webinar today about our new fast flat, our flat roof system. Allow me to briefly introduce myself. My name is Daniel Mers. I come directly from the development team and was actively involved in the fast flat project. Just quickly beforehand, you can ask me questions in the chat at any time. I'll answer those afterwards, either after the webinar or, if I spot them, during the session itself. Right, otherwise, today isn't about me, but about our fast flat. So, let's bring up our main keywords here. With fast flat, we can save up to 50% of the time during installation. That's simply because, with fast flat, we've developed a new click technology that allows us to install the entire layout on the roof without any tools. This means that the rails and our connectors can all be installed tool-free. It takes much less time, up to 50% less, and is, of course, a dream for the installer. Next key fact, we have up to 50% lower logistics costs. That's simply because our fast flat has a perfect length of 1.5 meters, which, as some of you will know, fits perfectly onto a Euro pallet. And that's exactly how it arrives for you, with our rails stacked interlocked on top of each other. We can fit up to 200 pieces on a single Euro pallet. That is, and this brings us to the next key point, we can deliver up to 100 kilowatt on a standard pallet. This is, of course, a huge logistical advantage. And the final key point, and we as a company stand by this, is that our fast flat is 100% made in Germany. That is, of course, our mark of quality. Exactly. Just very briefly in advance, I will now go through the individual items, explain them, and you will see the corresponding name and article number displayed in the bottom left corner, well, from my perspective, on the right, so you can look them up directly in our brochure. At the end of the webinar, you'll also see a few QR codes displayed, which will take you directly to the brochure, so you can view everything online as well. Right, let's get started. The heart of our fast flat, our SL fast flat floor rail. This is what it looks like. You've already seen it. It can be folded in and out. Everything arrives pre-assembled for you. We have eaves adapters, ridge adapters, 2 identical components, a ridge adapter and the floor rail, all pre-assembled and riveted together. And that's exactly how it arrives for you, ready to use. You basically don't have to screw, rivet, or do anything else. And, as I mentioned earlier, everything is stacked on top of each other in an interlocked way. That's how they come on the Euro pallet. This means that on site, you simply take them apart from each other, separate them, and you can get started straight away. Regarding the floor rail, as mentioned, we have a length of 1 meter 20 here. We have galvanized steel. ZM 430 is, of course, very high quality, which is what we have here. This means we also cover areas that are exposed to moisture, or especially in coastal regions with a higher salt content. With ZM 430, we can, of course, work very well. It is, of course, highly corrosion resistant. That is something we value. Exactly. What else is there to say about this? We have, if you could please take a closer look. At the front of the basic frame, on our floor rail, we have 2 tabs at the bottom and 2 tabs at the top. This is our assembly aid. This means that when we lay out our fast pad on site, we can very conveniently just set up the ridge. And from one tab to the next, we have exactly our module size, our standard module size, which is 1134 millimeters. The module manufacturers more or less all agreed on this a few years ago. The width does not change, everything remains within tolerance. Of course, here we can also accommodate manufacturing tolerances from the module manufacturers. And, I would say, everything is in proper order. And the special thing, of course, is, although we are fixed in width, because the width does not change with the standard sizes. When it comes to length, we are completely flexible, and nothing restricts us in the longitudinal direction across the base rail. That is, of course, a major advantage, as we do not have to measure the ridge or the eave side separately on a rail each time. No, here we have a fixed length, a fixed distance, and in this way we can save ourselves an enormous amount of time and hassle, and possibly, yes, time was exactly what I wanted to say, save time. That is, of course, very advantageous for you. Exactly. What else is there to say here? At first glance, we have a lot of cutouts here. They all have their own function. With the fast flat, we can cover both east-west systems and south-facing systems. And the nice thing about the fast flat, again, is that it's always with the same components. That means, for east-west systems we have this base rail, and for south-facing systems we also have this base rail, and of course, there are also corner and quarter point clamps. We can cover everything with just one rail. Exactly. And the whole thing is connected as follows. We have our rails. I'll take the second one here. For demonstration purposes, I'll now set up an east-west system. Here we have our connecting piece, our so-called base shoe. We have two different versions of it. I'll explain in a moment what each of them does. About the small base shoe, that's our standard shoe. Up here we have a steel plate, again ZM430 galvanized steel. And, you can already notice here, we have tabs here. These can be, exactly, you can see them here. We have various tabs on the sides here. This is essentially our click technology, which allows us to connect our rails together without any tools. For increased strength, we have additional tabs here that, slot into the base rail. And as a base, we use high-quality HDPE here. That is, high-density polyethylene. It's basically very. So we've specifically designed it for weather resistance, for stability, and of course the whole thing should be UV protected. For this we've used a very high-quality plastic. And above all, it also has the advantage that we're not working with steel directly on the membrane, but always have a base to protect the roof surface. This makes it perfectly suitable even for sensitive roof membranes. As you can see, we've got rounded edges everywhere here. There are no sharp edges here that could damage the membrane. Exactly. With the second shoe, it's immediately noticeable. At the top, we have practically the same component, again ZM430 galvanized steel. Everything is identical. The click system works in exactly the same way. A major advantage, we can always swap both shoes individually. If one, needs to be changed due to maintenance work, or if you want to expand somehow, or if you need a larger contact area at that point, you can swap them with each other as well. That works without any problems. They all have the same height. But the difference here is immediately apparent. It's obvious straight away. It's much larger. The reason for this, if you have soft insulation, or if you simply need a certain bearing surface and not just a single point, so to speak, not just a single point, but if you want to work on a slightly larger area, then you can use the bigger ones. Here we have a bearing surface of 200 by 200 millimeters. Exactly. The whole thing is also made of aluminium, the plate. However, underneath we also have a base, which is EPD. Well, it's an EPDM mat. This ensures, first and foremost, that we don't damage the roof membrane. And a major advantage of this base, we have a high coefficient of friction on the membranes, that is, on all common membranes we've tested. By the way, you can also determine the coefficient of friction using our friction value kit, which you can request from us. With the EPDM base, you can basically reduce the friction. This in turn also reduces the ballast. This is particularly interesting for roofs that aren't allowed to have much ballast, that simply aren't designed to take on so much ballast, so to speak. And if you want to save on ballast, you could do that with our extended base. Yes, that's what you could do with it. How does that work in practice? It's very simple. We take the base and our basic frame. In the middle, we have our stops. These are basically the contact points, the stop tabs, if you will. That's essentially our starting point. We position it there. And press down until we hear the clicking sound, and then we're safe. And it won't come out anymore. It won't come loose. It won't slip. Of course, we have a certain amount of play here, which is necessary for thermal expansion, so we can't keep our whole system completely rigid. That's quite clear. Otherwise, of course, we could put stress on the module, and that's exactly what we avoid with this shoe. Our system can move enough within itself to accommodate thermal expansion. Exactly. Now we've installed our first shoe. We fit the second one in exactly the same way. The advantage here, from this point on, we could theoretically install the fast ladder while standing. That means, if I'm now standing on the roof, I can also position the rail here again and simply lower it down. Then you already heard the clicking sound and we're ready to go. The next step, once everything is laid out, the eaves adapter and ridge adapter need to be swung up. Here, we've automatically set an inclination of 10 degrees. We practically can't go any further. This basically means we don't have to measure or do anything else. No, we have a fixed distance at the bottom, a fixed stop, which automatically sets itself when we swing it up. Exactly. Fast ladder, a ballasted system. Ballasted means we weigh down our system to prevent it from slipping or being lifted. How do we do all this? Of course, we have plenty of space underneath the module. We can use small stones. We can, place them in the rail. We can use larger stones and place them on top of the stones. We can stack the stones on top of each other. By the way, our Solar Pro tool lays all this out for us, and for you as well. That means it will be specified for us. You can also simply select the stones you have from a drop-down menu on our site, and at the end you'll of course receive a ballasting plan, so that everything is done correctly. If we're in areas where the wind is a bit stronger and it's not enough to simply place the stones on the rail, we have our ballast bracket for that, which covers several rails at once, so to speak, stacking them on top of each other. That means we place the ballast brackets across our basic frame, and here we have the option. Perhaps we could go into a bit more detail here, and here we have the option, because this is where the next features of the basic frame come into play. The direction, exactly. We have various cutouts here. These cutouts are all the same size. For example, we can attach our lightning protection here, or also, and that's exactly what these different spacings are for, we can accommodate different stone sizes with them. We can place and clamp the rail either at the stop. The counterpart would then look like this, and here we have the option, just as a small example. Let's say I have a stone that's 200 millimeters in size, 200 by 100 by 60, let's say, which is standard. Then we have an angle here, we have an angle opposite, and here we have exactly the spacing in between for the 200 millimeter stone. Of course, we also have the spacings for a 400 millimeter stone and for a 500 millimeter stone. And if necessary, we can also do it differently. We can rest our ballast angle here at the back, clamp it, and leave the next one loose, in case you have a special stone or a stone that, let's say, is very specific to your needs and doesn't have the standard dimensions. You can still achieve all of that with our fast slat, as I said, with our ballast angle or, if that's sufficient, simply by placing it in or on the rail. Exactly, right, as you've seen, we've set up a classic east-west system here. I already hinted at that at the beginning. We can also clamp south-facing systems with our fast flat, again using the same base rails. The whole thing would then look like this. I have to change my plans here. I have my basic frame again. Like this, exactly. Here, the first module would basically start, and the second one is no longer set up in the opposite direction, so not in east and west, but the next one is set up parallel to the first module in the same way, with the difference that now we need gaps, of course, to prevent shading. Because we're using the fast ladder. You've already seen it earlier. Here is where the first module is placed, and here is the next one. We're making very efficient use of space, of course, so that we can fit as many modules as possible on the roof and leave as few gaps as possible. However, with the south-facing system, we do need the spacing, otherwise the modules would simply shade each other. And of course, we have a solution for that as well. We have various spaces here, depending on what's needed and how it's designed. Let's start with the smallest spacer, 220 millimeters. Could you please show that in detail as well? Our 220 millimeter spacer piece is suitable. It's intended for our maintenance walkway. This means that we could also create a gap between the east-west system so that there is enough space to walk through and maintain the modules. If, for example, a module breaks due to hail damage, or if you simply want to have the system checked, you could of course install a spacer piece here at any time. Installation works, and that's once again the big advantage with Fast Flat. It's identical. We basically have the same base shoe again, the same base rail, and the same click mechanism. This means it can be installed in exactly the same way as everything else we offer. The 220mm spacer piece, as mentioned, is intended for our maintenance walkway, but of course it could also be used for shading purposes. However, we recommend our 390mm spacer piece. The 390mm simply comes from the fact that, during development, we agreed on a certain distance with a specific angle of incidence, so that we can practically cover almost any shading, even into the evening hours. Our 390mm spacer piece looks identical to the 220mm spacer piece and is installed in exactly the same way. As I said, a major advantage with us is that all the parts are simply flexible. And, of course, depending on the roof position, the pitch, and the shading, we also have a large spacer piece available if needed. All available from us. You can also see the article numbers below, which you can look up. We offer a 700mm spacer piece for a large gap, as mentioned, if required. Exactly. Good. Furthermore, there's something new with our Fast Flat system. Our system is now capable of carrying lightning protection as standard. This means that when we have our connection, we can ensure that our system is capable of carrying lightning protection. As mentioned, we have also been tested for this. We have a certificate for it, a test report as well. All we need for this is our connecting screw, of course, to ensure a secure contact between the metal parts. This is what they look like in detail. You might be able to see that a bit more clearly. This is a special screw from us, the connecting screw specifically designed for lightning protection, to ensure our system's lightning protection capability. What does the whole thing look like when assembled? How do you assemble it? Of course, the screw uses a Torx 40 head. By the way, all our clamps work in the same way. That means, if we need a bit attachment, we only need one. With the modules, there's no way around it. We have to screw them in, we have to clamp them. But here too, we have the advantage that we only need one tool, basically one bit attachment, Torx 40. Exactly, and with that, we're ready to go. Between the floor rails, you can now see two holes from this angle. Exactly. These overlap each other. We basically have holes in the rails and we have holes outside on the mounting plate. And now we use these with our connecting screw, so we can position it here, screw it tight, and do the same on the left. I forgot to mention, it's actually enough to screw in just one side. That means, for each connection we basically only need one pair of screws. So, once on the left, once on the right, and we can skip the back. By screwing one plate to the next, we ensure the connection is secure, and this also makes it capable of carrying lightning current. Exactly, that's all for our general items regarding the postlet. Now let's move on to our little highlight at the end. Exactly, that as well. Right, let's just make a bit of space. And today, I also have the honor of presenting our sample case. It looks like this, very high quality. A sample case for our customers. As you can see here, there's a QR code displayed, which you can use to request and order it directly. It's for demonstration purposes. With this case, you can show off our Fast Flat components, which are inside. This means you can practically set everything up on site straight away. You can see for yourselves how our system works, and you'll already have the first sample parts in your hands. I'm allowed to present it to you today. I'll open it up. This is what it looks like inside. Now we just need to You might need to zoom in a bit more so you can see everything clearly. That was a bit too much. That's it. As you can see, when you open it up, You have all the benefits in view. Our main components are listed, and, a big advantage, you also have several QR codes here, of course. Firstly, how do we install our east-west system? How do we install our south-facing system? And of course, there's also a general installation guide for the fast flat, as well as a direct QR code to the brochure. As I said, you can see our advantages listed here, our key facts. You can also see the individual items for the basic frame as well, including the item numbers, so you can easily look everything up. Okay, so what does it all look like? You've, now opened the case. We have a mat here. This isn't just intended for packaging, of course, but also for you on site as protection for your table, so you can try out the fast flat with our metal parts on any surface. I'll just put that aside for now. And then you can already see, the case is very comprehensively equipped. We have 4 different base shoes here, of course, so that you can make a connection on each side of the base rails, have a mat, and so that we can set up a complete system on site, allowing you to actually handle everything, take a look at it, and try out the clip mechanism for yourselves. And yes, there's also an intermediate piece included, so you can see how the whole thing works. 2 rails are also included. Under the intermediate pieces, you'll also find the brochures in paper form. And there's also a special feature that you can request and order from us, our new dismantling tool. I'll now introduce that to you along with the case. It looks like this. Let's please close it again now. Exactly. Here is a bit attachment developed by us. In detail, it looks a bit like, well, you might be able to guess a dragon. The idea behind it is that we can, of course, also dismantle our fast flat. Ideally, of course, we wouldn't have to, but it can happen that something is installed incorrectly, or if maintenance is needed, or if a module needs to be replaced, and we have to disconnect the base shoes or the connection between the rails. We can now use our dismantling tool here and easily release the connection between the shoe and the rail. For that, I'd like to have the rail again briefly, please. Then I can show you straight away how it works. Exactly. That's how the underlay also serves its purpose. Right, so what does the whole thing look like? The fast flat is assembled. The dismantling tool fits perfectly into any bit holder as usual. There's a standard bit attachment on the back. Of course, we also have our screwdriver here with various bit attachments. The most important one, of course, Torx 40 for all our components, and of course our dismantling tool. So, how do we proceed here? Thanks to our click mechanism, we have a gap here. That means we use the nose of the tool, position it, fit it in, and lever it out. The advantage here is that the contour has been designed so that we don't overstretch the tabs. This means that as soon as we reach the stop, I can't lever it out any further here. The tab is perfectly realigned, perfectly bent back, so that we can then separate the fast flat. Of course, we have to do the same on both sides, and then we can separate our connection again. Of course, you could also reuse the shoe. This is where the tool comes into play again. The tabs, of course, need to be bent back here again. Now you can see in detail that they are lying parallel, so that we were able to lever out the rail. And now, of course, we also need to, let's say, reset the whole thing. For this, we again start with the nose at the top, fold it over once, and you can already see in detail, let's say, the jaw of our dragon is touching. That means this is our stop, this is our signal. Hey, we've bent it back just right. You can't go any further anyway. Of course, with force you can do anything, but as you can see, I can't go any further here, so I know that our tab is reset again and has been bent back perfectly to the correct angle. Naturally, we need to repeat the whole process on the other side, and just like that, we're ready to go again and can also hear. You heard it, we take our click system, lay the next floor rail on top, and we're safe again. That's it, exactly. From my side, do you have any questions? Unfortunately, I haven't seen any questions in the chat. I hope that's a good sign. Otherwise, I'm finished and would like to say thank you very much for listening. Afterwards, we'll continue straight away at 11 o'clock with my colleague, Ms. Anna Dermeyer, and she will introduce you to our new SL planner. Exactly, do have a look. Otherwise, thank you very much and see you next time.